Hey everybody, I'm Alan, and this is Bricks and Blocks Gaming's review of the Death Vector supplement for the sci-fi miniature skirmish game Stargrave. Death Vector was released on May 29th, 2025, and was written by Stargrave author Joseph McCullough and published by Osprey Games. And the artwork, which I'll be showing a lot of, was all by Biagio D'Alessandro, who also did the artwork for the Dead or Alive supplement. Osprey did send me this copy for free, and I bought the Kindle version myself. Before I dive into the content in Death Vector, it's important to point out that while all of the previous Stargrave supplements have been totally self-contained, needing just the supplement and the Stargrave core book to play, this one's a little bit different. Many of the things in this book require or make use of the rules about space travel, or advanced astrogation as it's called, found in the Bold Endeavour supplement. I'll talk about this and some other differences I noticed in my opinions at the end of this video, but I would highly encourage players to check out my review of this other book before or after watching the rest of this video. So let's get to the bricks and blocks of the first part of this review. Death Vector starts out like many of the author's other works, with Joe McCullough giving some info into his motivations and thought processes while he was writing the book. The supplement focuses on robots and AI, and Joe talks a bit about the state of AI in the real world here in 2025 and how that affects writing and other aspects of life. And it's interesting to read his perspective, and I highly recommend not skipping over that section. Death Vector takes the crews into what's known as the Outlaw technology sector, a region of the galaxy that was once overrun by a sentient AI and an army of robots and cyborgs that it had created. This mechanical civilization eventually started attacking neighboring sectors until the empires of the time joined forces and took the battle to the machines, and destroyed whatever it was that was unifying and controlling these unnatural creations. It's now been 300 years since that war, and knowledge of what's contained within the Outlaw technology sector has become legend, making many crews curious what technologies and other treasures might be found, should they muster the courage to face the horrors that are rumored to inhabit the region. The book contains 8 new scenarios, and while they can be played as a campaign, the first 7 battles are designed to be played in any order, while the 8th scenario is more complex and works as a good finale to the player's exploration of the Outlaw technology sector. With this many scenarios, I won't go into details about each one specifically, but they're basically designed to feel like you're planet hopping through this deadly, uncharted, robotic region of the galaxy. And as such, there's a new Unwanted attention table that most of the scenarios use, which contains a variety of machines and automatons, described as horrific combinations of dead flesh and advanced cybernetics, kind of like mechanical zombies. For those looking forward to building and painting a motley crew of cyborgs, there are a few different types of these enemies the crews will be facing. And this new table and the horrors that will appear from rolling on it are what really brings the theme of this book to life. There's your standard run-of-the-mill automatons. There's self-destructing robots that carry explosives and blow up once they've moved into combat. The automaton butcher is a grotesque creation geared for close combat. The Hulk version is like a shock trooper with heavy-hitting weapons and stats. There's automaton soldiers that make up the enemy's ranged forces. And automites, insect-like robots that are weak by themselves but stronger in numbers. And most of these robots I've mentioned have the pack hunter trait, allowing them to activate with any other automaton to gang up and overwhelm the crews. The Bestiary also contains a cybernetic snake that can show up from rolls on the Unwanted attention table, and some living water creatures that can show up in one of the scenarios. To entice the crews into the Outlaw technology sector, the book contains a new Advanced Technologies table. However, the wording in the text just says players can use this table when rolling for loot after a game. It doesn't specify a game from this book. So while that seems unthematic because that's the whole point of outlawed technology, it appears you can find this stuff anywhere. This is the same language used in the Hope Eternal supplement, and both of these provide no option of just buying from their tables after a battle. In comparison, the Quarantine 37, Last Prospector, and Bold Endeavour supplements specifically state their tables can only be used with their scenarios. but seem to imply they can be used for making purchases after any kind of battle. The rest of the content in the Death Vector book really requires you to use the rules found in the Bold Endeavor supplement, though there are probably some modifications you can make if you don't have access to those. However, since the Death Vector book often refers to these rules, I'm going to be presenting the rest of this video in a way that assumes the viewer has access to and understanding of those rules. Again, please see my other video if needed. Now let's get to the bricks and blocks of everything else found in the Death Vector supplement. As far as the phrase Death Vector, this refers to the path the crews must travel to enter the Outlaw technology sector, as they have to navigate through a partially functioning defense grid that was created by the artificial intelligence during its prime. To represent this in the game, when the playgroup decides to attempt this path, there are a number of ship skills tests that will need to be rolled, and failure indicates some form of the defense system, drones, mines, auto turrets, or other things, have caused damage to the ship's structural integrity. Getting out of the OTS is just as deadly, and should a crew decide to leave, they are required to make the same rolls they did to get in. Since resources, besides trashed robots, are scarce in the sector, nothing can be purchased while in the OTS, including ship upgrades. Crews can't pay for repairs, though the ship's engineer can still do their free fixing between battles, and crew members can't be hired. Instead, with all the robots and cybernetic parts abounding in the area, fallen crew members can be replaced with robots. However, they're limited to being just recruits or runners. Of course, braving the Death Vector to leave and once again to come back is always an option if the crew wants something they can't get while in the robot graveyard. For crews planning to travel into the Outlaw technology sector, I'll point out a few strategies to consider. Since robots abound in this area, learning powers that specifically affect them is a good idea, like Dark Energy, which causes a +7 instead of +5 shooting attack against machines. And since none of the enemies in this book have decent will stats, Control Robot can be very effective. Also, with the limitations on hiring new crew members, the out-of-game Create Robot can do some serious work, as it allows you to build other kinds of robots, and the power says it can make any type except for armored troopers. So I believe you can make soldiers found in the supplements. So this would give your crew a lot more options, and I'd highly recommend learning it before or during a trip through the Outlaw technology sector. While in the OTS, there's a different space encounter table to use with 20 new possibilities of things you can run into between the battles. And while these are thematically set up to work with ventures into this area, players could easily use this while not in the OTS, instead of the Bold Endeavor encounter table, which would be nice if you've played a long campaign and have encountered most of what's in the original table. This section requires the Bold Endeavor supplement, as you need crew members assigned to ship positions, and you need to track damage and other things that can happen. The main additional game mechanic Death Vector brings is what's called the Network, which basically represents the AI that controlled the area and the computer web it used to spread itself from one location to the next. There's a network sheet in the book and available on Osprey Games' website, which visualizes how it functions. It really takes reading the whole section to fully understand how this game mechanic works, but essentially the crews might have a chance after each battle to attempt to kind of hook themselves up to and try to hack into the network. But it's important to know that failure can lead to some very negative consequences. However, success allows you to basically make your way around and deeper into the network, with each step of the way granting you bonuses for achieving a node or section you've broken into. The network requires the Bold Endeavor rules because you eventually use the different ship skills your crewmates have to unlock the later sections of the network, and because most of the rewards for hacking deeper into the system just give you bonuses that affect these skills, not general things that anyone can use. And this process of hacking through the network is basically like you're reprogramming your ship's various systems with new knowledge and AI assistance you've learned about. And the book does give some options for how to create new networks should the players decide to do so. Now this is usually the part of the review where I get excited to talk about all the new ways to build your crew, but unfortunately this is the first supplement released so far, except the Dead or Alive supplement, which is really more of a solo rules set than a standard supplement that doesn't include any soldiers, backgrounds, or powers. I was a bit surprised at this. I expected some sort of cyborg soldiers or like a robot hunter that gain bonuses against enemies you'll encounter in the book scenarios, but sadly no. So I'll move straight on to my opinions. The content of this supplement is really atypical for Stargrave and for content the author has released for Frostgrave. I think this may be the first supplement for either of these two games that relies so heavily on the players owning another specific supplement. In fact, 30 of Death Vector's 80 pages hinge on having Bold Endeavour, and using its optional rule set for space travel. This makes me think that space travel might be here to stay with Stargrave, and that we'll see additional content in future supplements related to this. However, if this is the case, I believe it would be wise for Osprey to include rules on their website for advanced astrogation, the ship upgrades related to them, and possibly the rules for the Apprentice and Expert, which are soldiers from the Bold Endeavour that are designed to fit into this playstyle. And if there won't be further astrogation content, I would have liked those rules to also be included in the Death Vector supplement. Something I noticed is while this book is the same thickness as the other supplements, there's less pages, and you can actually feel the pages are thicker than those in the other supplements. The advanced astrogation rules only take up 10 pages in Bold Endeavour, and adding these 2 soldier profiles, the ship upgrade table, and the spaceship sheet would have put this book at essentially the same 96 pages all the other full-length supplements have. Another option for those pages could have been some new player options as far as backgrounds, powers, and soldiers. With them omitted, it makes me wonder if we may not see any more of these, that the author has decided these options are now complete, which is probably fine. There comes a point where more options can just bog things down, and we have plenty of great options for building our crews from the other content. As far as whether or not to buy this book, don't if it's your first supplement. You can get a lot more mileage from some of the other Stargrave content that's out there. Death Vector is really a supplement for a supplement, and I'd only recommend it if you also have Bold Endeavour and enjoy the advanced astrogation rules it contains. That said, I think this is a great add-on for someone like me who enjoys the space traveling rules and who wants to collect everything that Joseph McCullough has released for Stargrave. Be sure to check out my Bold Endeavour review and leave me a comment with your thoughts. I'm Alan with Bricks and Blocks Gaming. Thanks for watching and play well.